in order to be an entrepreneur and have success, it's about 70 to 80% mental. And the remaining 20 to 30% is actual tactical business strategy. So the majority of everything that is holding you back is because you're not mentally equipped to be able to do it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Ben Kall. I'm lucky to call Ben one of my mentors, friends, and a true source of inspiration in my life. Ben has spent the last 8 years acquiring and scaling a portfolio of over $70 million in assets under management. He is directly invested in and managed single-family, multifamily, self-storage, and triple-net commercial real estate deals across the Midwest.
The biggest thing that I saw get an impact as a real estate agent was doing open houses and then learning how to properly follow up with people. What I learned as a real estate agent, or specifically someone in sales, is everybody knows 5 to 10 real estate agents, but who is going to be the first one that comes to mind when you're ready to buy, sell, or invest?
Ben put in years of hard work to develop the right types of skills, network, and foundational knowledge that most people simply aren't willing to build. Ben has incredible work ethic, attention to detail, all backstopped by his generous personality. He is a true go-giver and someone who lifts up everyone around him.
So now I've been a licensed real estate agent for almost 9 years. And the amount of bootstrapping, grinding to build clients is no longer no more. But the key there that I've paid attention to is consistency, treating people well and following through on what you say you're going to do and doing a really good job with it and keeping the client's needs before your own.
This interview has useful nuggets of wisdom, tactical advice, and experience that will benefit you no matter what stage of the journey you're currently in. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I am joined by Ben Kall. Ben and I have met through a mastermind that we're both in, the Action Academy, and we've gotten to know each other both in person a few times and over the course of the last, year plus. Ben is a mentor within the community and truly a source of inspiration for myself and every member of the community. I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of their incredible work ethic, incredible story. But before I butcher your intro, I'd love for you to just give us a quick rundown in your own words of who is Ben Kall.
I really appreciate that. And it's been a really fun journey for me. And I know we were just down at an event together down in Tulum and we got to connect kind of one-on-one and get some life updates as to what we're both up to. But for me, growing up, I was an athlete. I played multiple sports in college. That's what had driven me the most physically, mentally, and throughout school. And I knew if I wanted to go to college and I was going to get a degree, I needed to play sports because that kept me grounded and it kept me working and it forced me to get better grades because I had learning disabilities as a kid. So I knew that if I was going to play sports in college, I wanted to do it at the absolute highest level possible if I was going to put my body through it. So I decided to walk on to the football team at Kansas State University. I got a degree in kinesiology. I got a minor in leadership. I ended up earning a scholarship a couple years in. And after that, I thought that I was on the path through my education and degree to become a personal trainer and coach, training college athletes to go to the combine to play major league sports. Right before I was about to accept an internship, my actual coach at the football team said, "Ben, we think you'd make a really good college football coach. Would you be interested in a new position that we're starting at the university? You'd get to stay here, you get to pay, you get benefits, and you get to coach on our staff with us." And I said, "This sounds like an absolute dream job. I get to pay to continue to now be a coach." Yes. So that was a major pivot from what I had been planning to do. And I dove headfirst into it, loved it. Fast forward, I got married. And 6 months after being married, I realized that the lifestyle that we had envisioned for my wife and I and our future family was not at all what was going to take place if I stayed in that career. For those of you that might not know what coaching at the Division I level is, you're working basically 365 days a year around the clock. You're not only coaching the players that you have on your team, prepping for the teams that you're going to play throughout the fall, but you're also having to consistently recruit kids from all over the world to come to your university to play on the team that you're coaching for. And because of that, it's like being a real estate agent, which we'll get into in a bit, but you're working around the clock, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. You get home at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. during the season. And one night specifically, I remember walking through the door and my wife had to set her alarm to wake up to eat dinner with me out of a box that I would bring home. And that was the extent of being able to see my newly married wife. And we basically just had a breakdown and said that this is not what we want. And we decided to quickly, within a month, completely pivot, move into my parents' basement in Minnesota. So we moved across the country to move into my parents' basement to what I had thought to be an athletic director at the high school that I went to as a kid. Interviewed, realized that job was not what we thought it was. So my backup option was to become a real estate agent until I found something back in sports. To fast forward through this part of the journey, I am a competitor. And so I dove in headfirst and built a real estate sales business where I was helping people buy, sell, invest, build houses, which led to commercial real estate, buying, leasing, development, which led to building a third-party management division where I'm now managing other people's real estate, everything from a single-family house to Section 8 apartment buildings, to storage facilities, to triple net retail centers where we're managing tenants such as Chipotle, Verizon, Panera. And then I bootstrapped it. So I was literally doing everything because we were broke. We started this whole entrepreneurship journey with literally $6,000 living in my parents' basement. So I was doing everything because I really had to stretch my money. And so finally, about 2 years into that journey, a light bulb clicked. And I realized that I'm now making a lot of investors money. And in return, I'm just getting a small commission for keeping tenants in there and keeping the properties nice. So in 2018, we started investing into self-storage was my very first investment. And today is almost the end of 2024, and we currently have just over $70 million of assets under management that we own, control, and operate ourselves through a private equity company.
Amazing. All right. So there's a lot to pull on there. I want to start towards the beginning though. So at the very beginning of your intro, you spoke about how even at a young age, you wanted to compete at the highest level and you had this, you were overcoming a learning disability and you had the competitor spirit from day one and you always held yourself to a high standard. And it seemed like you're unafraid to tackle obstacles, even if there was a lot of friction in your way. And that clearly has guided you through all the way up until, like you said, today, where you've built this incredible portfolio, company, culture, everything, right? Where do you think that competitor spirit originally came from? Because one, I'll just add this, but the theme of this show, the hybrid real estate professional, is someone who takes experience, income, knowledge from the other areas of their life and uses it to empower a real estate portfolio or investing journey. And so you're the epitome of that with pulling from these other areas of your life. So I'm just curious where you think the source of that came from, because not everyone's geared that way.
To be honest, I still to this day think about that a lot. I think a lot of it has to do in credit to my parents for instilling a work ethic, not allowing me to play video games, not allowing me to be on the TV, to go outside, play in the woods. And basically, if you want something, you need to work for it. So I remember as a kid that I wanted BMX was a big thing, Tony Hawk, that type of sports, and I wanted a BMX bike. So my parents basically gave me the keys to our lawnmower and said, go mow all the neighbors' lawns, save your money until you can get your bike. So I was taught that if I wanted something, I needed to work for it. And I think the other big root of it was learning disabilities. My biggest fears are failure and looking bad because of that at such a young age. So I think that I am willing to outwork people in order to not let my limitations show in front of people. And so I think that's what pushed me through sports. And even though I had the ability to play at the Division I level on a team that was highly ranked throughout the college landscape, I'm not a freak of nature as an athlete. I just will outwork people and I will outwit people and I will outsmart people because of my training and discipline to learn what needs to be done. And so now that I'm out of sports, I've changed my mindset to if I'm going to build a business, I need to use a lot of those skills that were ingrained in me as a kid and throughout college.
Yeah, no, I think what you learned as a competitor, what you learned as a student, overcoming those challenges, what you learned as a kid growing up in that environment clearly applies to today just as much as it ever may have in the past. And that's one of the things I love when I learn about people's backstories and where they came from. No matter where they are today, everyone draws from the past. something. And so I think it's really cool that how you came up, and then also the inflection point where you and your wife realized that things weren't trending in the direction you wanted for your guys' life together. And that's another thing that you don't really realize it until you're on that journey. But I think it's incredible how you pivoted and then you took the better parts of what you learned and who you were becoming, and then you applied it to something brand new. So my second question is, you mentioned that you were going to go for the coaching job at the high school you went to, but that your backup plan was real estate. How did that idea even come into your head as a backup plan? Like what planted the seed of real estate being an option for you?
My best friend growing up, he was the best man at my wedding. He was a real estate agent in my hometown. I didn't really have interest in selling houses, but he started flipping houses, the true flipping like HGTV, where you go in, it's foreclosed, you empty all the furniture, you throw away all the stuff in a dumpster, you renovate the house and you sell it and you get a check. And he just sent me a screenshot of the check he got after he flipped his first house. And I was like, damn, like it would take me a year or two at my current job to make that amount of money. So this seems interesting. And because of some things that I had the opportunity to learn from my dad about construction, building decks, handyman things, I thought that I could be the kind of the workhorse for him. And he would do the finance, he would find the houses, etc. And I would just be the kind of the laborer. And now looking back on it, that doesn't sound fun at all. But he was my best friend and we thought we could partner together. And so the backup plan was I'll just get my real estate license to have it and we'll go flip houses together.
Fair. Yeah. So it's in the comment you just made about that doesn't sound fun now. We're about the same age. We're in our mid 30s. There's things that would have sounded fun to me at 25 that don't sound fun to me now. But the fact that you're willing to do the hard work and willing to grind, and I want to unpack some of the stuff you did in the early days of being an agent, but like being able to outwork people is a competitive advantage. And when you're in a position to do so, when you're younger and you have a little more free time, even if you do have a partner, if you guys are on the same page about what you're working towards, you can rise to the top of the other people that are in that space. I've heard your story about the beginning days as an agent before, but I'd love for you to just recap like what a grind it is and some of the stuff that you did to establish your like initial book of business.
So the crazy part about this part of my journey is that we packed up our entire life and drove and moved into my parents' basement. And literally during that car ride moving into my parents' basement, my best friend that I was going to partner with decided to leave real estate in general and become a medical sales device rep and left real estate, all of it. And so I was now completely on my own as an independent real estate agent living in my parents' basement. And so at this point, my back was up against the wall because I turned down the job that we moved here for. We both left our careers in Kansas and I was living in my parents' basement. So I knew that if I was going to do this, I absolutely needed to make it work. So when it comes to hustling and doing everything that people said to do to become a successful real estate agent, I just did it. I picked the top producing brokerage in my hometown, which was Remax. I wanted my office in the building to be as close to all of the top producing agents that sell over 100 houses a year by themselves, so I could just listen and learn and watch. I wanted to know what time they get to the office. What do they do in the office? If they're on the phones, what are they saying? What are they doing? What questions are they asking? What advice are they giving? And so like I had zero clients, so I had nothing but time. So I would just listen and learn and ask very strategic questions to the people who I wanted to eventually become. And once I got enough information to go prospect and get leads, I was door knocking, I was cold calling, I was going to every single Chamber of Commerce event, I was going to every business after hours to go network. I was doing BNI, which stands for Business Network something. But basically, you go get referrals from other entrepreneurs and anything you could possibly do to get your face, your brand, your company, what you do in front of people, I was doing. The biggest thing that I saw get an impact as a real estate agent was doing open houses and then learning how to properly follow up with people. And the number one thing that I did that differentiated myself is I would send an enormous amount of handwritten notes to friends, family, and people that I met. And it was as simple as, "Hey, Aaron, it was great to see you in the grocery store. Glad to hear your kids are doing well. Thanks so much." And it was literally a handwritten note that just had my letterhead that I was a real estate agent, because what I learned as a real estate agent, or specifically someone in sales, is everybody knows 5 to 10 real estate agents, but who is going to be the first one that comes to mind when you're ready to buy, sell, or invest? Period. And my whole business was built off of relationships. And so the way that I built my business took a little bit more time, but it's been sustainable. So now I've been a licensed real estate agent for almost 9 years. And the amount of bootstrapping grinding to build clients is no longer no more. And now, fortunately, I just stay in touch with all of my clients via text and Facebook. And now it's hard to say this, but now my phone just rings and I'm able to produce and do business. Whereas before, I had to put in hours and hours of grinding and prospecting in order to get a couple leads. Now it's completely flip-flop, but the key there that I've paid attention to is consistency, treating people well and following through on what you say you're going to do and doing a really good job with it and keeping the client's needs before your own.
Makes sense. And again, it's a competitive advantage that you were willing to front load all that work, networking, going after hours, listening, asking strategic questions. I can picture it clearly because in many ways, I'm geared in a similar way where I'm excited by the idea of putting in work into something that can grow with me and that I can be proud of. I want to work on something that makes me proud, that I put effort into it and that I'm building it not half-assed, right? And there's nobody embodies that better than you.
I think just the thing that I would say is that I've built a few different businesses now, and I think it depends what you want and how long you want your business to be around. So I think there's two different paths of specifically sales, but building business is option number one, is it going to be transactional? And option number two, is it going to be relationship based? Transactional is you're just looking for leads, you're doing cold calling, you're doing pay-per-click ads, you're funneling and it's more of a turn and burn and you're just sell, which can be good, but you need to have phenomenal systems to do that at volume and also to continue to get new leads day after day, year after year. The relationship businesses, I think that takes a little bit more to start and come out of the gates, but over time, the amount of grinding and lead funnels that you actually need will be less. And I think it's something that can build a business that will last basically your lifetime and potentially generations if you build it correctly.
Such an important nuance, right? What the turn and burn, like one lead for one sale, like move on, never hear from them again type thing, transaction, or a relationship that can grow over time. So remind me chronologically, this was all pre-2018 before you started investing, correct?
Yep. So I started as a real estate agent in February of 2016, and I started my third-party management division in about July of 2016.
Okay. And the impetus for starting that was because you thought you could build an additional skill set and get exposure to a different segment of the industry, or was there something else behind it?
Not at all. Zero thought that went into it, to be honest. I basically, as an agent, I sold a townhome to what was an investor at the time. I had no idea what it meant to be an investor other than he said, I wanted a townhome that was 3 bedrooms that was close to this school. I said, great, here it is. And I sold it to him. He lived in it for a couple months. Then he said, I need a property manager. Who would you recommend? I just Googled top property managers in Rochester and sent him the top 3 phone numbers. He called me a couple months disappointed because they didn't follow through and said, Ben, I like you. I trust you. I know you have zero clue what you're doing, but you're smart. You'll figure it out. Will you manage my townhome for me? And I was like, how much will you pay me? And he's like, usually you just get paid a % of whatever rent you collect. And I'm like, huh, great. This sounds great. This is basically passive income without the risk of having to get a mortgage and personally guarantee anything. So the limiting belief that I had here is that I could build passive income through an active management. But that was my way into learning about investing. I had to get an LLC. I had to get contracts. I had to get leases. I had to get a website. I had to get a business bank account, etc. And so that's how my very first actual business was created. And then word of mouth spread because what I found in my specific market is there's a couple big management companies, but their reviews are like 1 or 2 stars. They do a terrible job, but people just use them because there's no other option. So my business just grew word of mouth. And as it continued to grow, I realized that it took way more time than I ever thought to manage other people's properties.
I've always thought property management is a thankless job. It's really hard to scale. When you scale, you run into operational challenges, then you end up hiring people. When you end up hiring people, the quality of service tends to slide, which forces you to scale more, to afford more people. It's just a really hard business model to nail. But it's interesting the way it came about, where it was just an organic conversation, but it was born out of a clear need. There wasn't anyone else in the market filling that at a high quality, and you clearly stood out to the person who you were talking to that said, "Hey, you have the work ethic to do this. Why don't you try it?" I remember a conversation we had at one of the in-person events we were at. Somebody asked you a question: if you had to start over with nothing, what would you do? And your answer, the first step out of many, was to start a local property management company. Do you still feel that way? And can you explain why that was the step one of your answer?
Yeah, no, if I had to go back to 26-year-old Ben and start over with the same financial resources I had back then, but the knowledge I have today, I would still say that property management is a great avenue to get started for the sole reason, from a financial standpoint, that is, that it doesn't really cost you financially anything. It just costs you your own personal time and ability to drive places. So if I can go sell in order to prospect and get clients to manage their properties, once I get the management contract, any expense that comes through the door, I'm expensing to the owner of the property. If the refrigerator goes out, all I do is coordinate it and I charge the owner of the house for it. And then I collect a fee when someone moves in and rents. So it's a very low overhead business to start, and you can grow it and scale it to a point where you can do a fantastic job to build a living with minimal overhead. So my profit margins on that company, even today, are about 85%.
So you said the word today, which implies that you obviously started with that single townhome and it's now an integral part of your business. And I don't want to fast forward too much yet, but the point I want to make there is that is still part of your business today. And for the reasons you mentioned, builds the right skills. There is, if you operate correctly, the ability to maintain a good margin. And then once you have that, I've had a lot of problems. I invest in 3 different markets, and we've had quite a problem finding quality property management. There's one market where we've gone through 4 property managers, and then we ended up self-managing just because the quality of service was not what we hoped for and needed it to be for our tenants. And so I think having that skill, and my skill is nowhere near yours, but just having the ability to manage a property is very valuable for an investor, whether you have one single family home or whether you have 70 million in assets under management across the board. So I think that's a really cool part of your story that sometimes I think people look at the headline and say, "Oh, you have all these different projects and assets under management," but it's literally under management. You guys are doing the actual day-to-day work too. So from there, before we get to the investor part, if you had to go back again to 26-year-old Ben, would you even do the agent part? Did you get enough value out of that it made a huge impact on your moving forward, or how did that kind of expand?
That's a great question, and one that I haven't put as much thought into. I think, today, but the teaser to lead to the back half of the conversation is, between the 3 divisions of my company, which is sales, management, and then investing, right? All 3 of them funnel each other perfectly. So investors want to buy a property, my sales team gets a commission. When we sell them a property, we then manage it for them and we earn revenue through that. And then naturally, a lot of times people will realize how much work it is and unprofitable just owning one single family home will be, but they understand the benefits of investing in real estate. So then they will become a passive investor in some of the larger deals that we do through our private equity company. So today, from a lead source, that's why we still keep in control all 3 of the companies. But from the beginning to becoming a real estate agent, I think one of the things that I learned by selling houses is you learn what makes a good location and what attracts people to certain properties. So as an investor, you put your hat on and say, oh, it is really important to have main level living next to a school. Oh, it's really important to have 4 bedrooms next to an elementary and middle school. That attracts tenants, right? The same, any property that attracts people is the same if it's a rental or if it's a home that you're looking to buy or sell. So I think I learned a lot there. And then the other piece that I learned a lot from was when you sell a house to a buyer, a lot of times they'll do a home inspection. And I would attend every single inspection with the inspector, all of the contractors, the estimating, the bidding, how do homes work, how does the HVAC system actually work, etc. So I got a lot of knowledge about houses through attending inspections and meeting contractors to do bids. And that what allows me to get the confidence that when I became a property manager, that I could replace toilets, I could replace sinks, I could snake toilets all the way to the sewer line because I watched it happen by a professional so much. I learned how to do sheetrock, tiling, painting. I knew how to estimate because I knew what everybody was charging. So, as a property management company, I would do all that work myself, but I would just take 10 to 20% off what the market was charging. And then I would do it myself because I had no overhead and they were already paying for the supply. So, it was a win for them and it was a win for me. So, basically, to stack all that up, yes, to answer your question now, I learned a lot as a real estate agent that funneled me into my investing business, or excuse me, my management company, which gave me the confidence to start investing myself.
Fair. But at the beginning, you probably didn't see how that was going to evolve. So one thing I've noticed as many times as I've heard your story and even what you've shared so far in this interview, you do a lot of adding and layering, not a lot of subtracting. So did you find a way to fit 36 hours into a 24-hour day? Or how did this kind of, from a lifestyle perspective, how did that work?
Yeah, I touched on it briefly what my prior career of coaching was. When I say I was working 80 to 100 hours minimum at as a college coach, that was real. But I was literally in our building that whole time. So to come back home initially, where you start and you have nothing but time, you have a flexible schedule, you can go home, you can go work out with your wife, you can walk your dog. And as the company started building and my business started to double, yes, I started to work more, right? I still work more than 40 to 60 hours a week, but it's at my pace, at my own schedule. And if I need a break to go travel for a week, I go travel for a week. So I still work and maximize every minute of my day, but I do it at my pace, at my time. And I know that the relationship with my wife, we don't have kids yet, but the relationship with my wife does come first. And the reason we're building today with what we're building is for the lifestyle. And we know we don't want to go back to the trap of what we left years ago when we were coaching
And
football.
that's fair. I guess the contrast creates, you probably felt free as a bird, not being trapped in a athletic facility. And like you said, being able to go home in the middle of the day or have lunch or go to the gym, even if you were out in the evenings networking and doing all that relationship building or property management work. I had a similar feeling when I left the entertainment industry where I was always at concerts and I'd be at the office all day and then I'd be at shows 3 or 4 nights a week. It was similar, like 80 plus hour weeks. And then now I work from home. And even though I still work a lot and I have my day job and the real estate stuff I'm working on, it feels by comparison a lot lighter than what I was doing before. So maybe that's another competitive advantage of just having been in such a period of high intensity that you can understand it's not as hard as it might sound to work hard in a traditional sense, especially when the average person doesn't. I don't know.
And I honestly think even today, people will ask me once they hear the full scope of my story, what we do, what our team looks like. We're a very thin team for what we have and the companies that we have, but we maximize the time and efficiency that we're putting towards business, right? Because we don't want to just sit here and work to work. It's very intentional. So that way we can leave the office, quote unquote, and go spend time on the boat, in the woods, at sporting events, at concerts. Our heads are down working so that we can get the heck out of here and go enjoy
Yeah.
life.
No, as it should be. And that's the benefit of being an entrepreneur where you've designed that into your vision. So speaking of vision, one topic that I've heard you talk about that I love is I want you to share what your vision was in 2018 when you bought that first property, what you thought you guys were going to do, and then maybe parlay that into how that's evolved into what you're currently doing.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So when we moved back, we were still living in my parents' basement. When we were at that age where you're becoming an adult and you're like, hey, mom, hey, dad, who do you use for health insurance? Who do you use for car insurance? Who's your financial advisor? I should probably set these up. And so we just did whatever our parents did. And I remember sitting down with our financial advisor just very early going on. What does your budget look like? What do you think you're going to want your life to look like when you're 65? How much money are you going to want to spend in your 60s annually? And we're just like, dude, I'm like 25, 26 years old. I can barely think about tomorrow and we have no money. So how are we even supposed to think about that? And so I look back at, we save all of our notes from key meetings and save them so we can go back and reminisce on the stages of our journey. And fortunately, we had the mindset to even do that at the beginning because it's really fun to look at now. But our goal when we started out after that first couple meetings with our financial advisor was to own 3 single family homes and buy them early so that eventually when we have kids, we could sell them and it would pay for their college. And at the time we were 60, because we wanted to retire early, our goal was to have $5.2 million saved up when we were 60 years old.
I love it. And what changed?
What changed is, I think, the confidence and clarity that you can have way more than you ever thought. And surrounding yourself with the right people that are going to be able to push you to achieve the goals that you have for yourself, but push you even further to achieve the goals that they know they can help you achieve at a 10x level. And so my very first investment out of the gates, we just bought our very first house for $170,000, but our personal first investment was a 250 unit storage facility for $1.5 million. So that happened. And all of a sudden, our mindset, vision, and goals changed drastically.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out-of-state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show. Was it because you saw what was possible changing around you and you said, why not push further and lean into this because you had the skill and it was already happening organically? Or do you think it was the competitor mentality? I guess the crux of the question I'm trying to ask is, why did you feel the need or desire to push bigger versus keep it more that contains slow and steady type of vision?
Yeah, I think you touched on it earlier, but my story was never planned. It was never said, this year we're going to accomplish this, next year we're going to do that. Things just happened. And it wasn't until now it's 2024. I started as an agent in 2016, started investing in 2018. And it wasn't until about 2022 where we actually sat down to strategically plan and visualize what we wanted our life to look like. So it was just run and gun. And the quote, are you an inch deep or a mile wide, or vice versa? I was definitely a mile wide and an inch deep on everything that I was doing. So it took time to really hone in on the things that brought me joy, both professionally and in my personal life. And that's when we really refined things in about 2022, right around the back end of COVID, to really bring clarity to what our goals are. And that's when we really took off.
So along the way, you and your wife are building this together, right? And I'm sure I know you two, and you're very close, you're very in sync. And I think you guys probably had very deliberate conversations about how you wanted things to evolve. Was she involved on the day-to-day? What was the kind of dynamic as you were taking what started as a small idea, again, like a contained, more traditional idea of what to do with real estate, and turning it into this big, grand vision that you've now actualized? What was the actual day-to-day evolution of that and the dynamic between you two, if you're willing to share?
So it would be hilarious if she was sitting across the table, not on camera, watching me say what I'm about to say. But at the beginning, it would be, hey, I came home. I heard this. I was told I should try this. So I'm going to do it. Are you okay with it? And it's no, this makes no sense. You just became a real estate agent. Now you want to become a general contractor and build houses. Like, I would always come home with these ideas, as now everyone labels it as the visionary. But there was zero reason to be a visionary. We were just getting started and had no money. And so she really at the beginning was more the skeptic, reining me back in, telling me to stay focused on what I was doing. And looking back, there was a lot of times where I got frustrated because I was the go-getter. I was putting myself out there. I thought I had mentors, right? But she would reel me back in and keep me grounded, focusing on the couple things that I was doing. Now, over time, you start to implement a couple of those things to gain confidence, to gain the clarity that what you're doing is actually working. And there's a purpose behind what you're doing and a strategy behind it that you didn't even know was really a strategy. So at the beginning, she kept me grounded. Now, today, when I come home with different ideas, she was involved in the day-to-day business to an extent. Like, she wasn't showing houses, but she was helping me turn over apartments in a day. Like, she was painting We would renovate bathrooms together. She would help me when we bought our storage facility, answer the phones, do collection calls. She would help me do security checks. So by default, I needed help, so she helped. But formally as a business partner with day-to-day duties, never, right? She was there mostly to support and help guide me and coach me through everything that I was doing. And so today in our journey, the same is true. Now it's different because the spreadsheets that I was doing back then was like a single page, super easy. Today, they're overly complex with over 20 tabs. And so anytime we make a decision in our business to go buy something, to hire somebody new, we sit down and we essentially have a board meeting, and I have to have an agenda per se and lay it out why I believe this is a good idea, what the plan is, what the financial risk is, etc. And she uses more of her intuition and gut reaction if it's a good idea. And I use my actual tactical knowledge and mathematical side of it. And we make decisions together on every single thing that we do in any of our
I
businesses.
love it because it's a balancing of perspectives. And I can picture it so clearly. I can picture you, and I can also picture myself doing this where I walk into the kitchen after I get fired up about an idea, and I'm all like almost borderline manic, excited about something. And then my wife's not on that level. And she's like, hey, come back down to earth for a second and go do what you already set out to do.
And the other thing that I said that I've learned is I touched on the huge pivot for us in 2022. But the big thing for that is that's because that's when we knew we were scaling to a point where, wow, this is working. We really need help and a support system of mentors and coaches to make sure that A, we're not going to crash and burn and screw everything up. But B, what could this become if we actually had help? Because it wasn't like the whole fake it till you make it. It wasn't just do it and hope for the best. There was intention behind everything that we did, but there was no real guidance. And so in that 2021, 2022 period, I got a coach and we joined a couple masterminds. I started investing in myself. I started going to conferences to get like real education on these are the tactical things that you need to do day to day. These are the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success. And these are the things that you absolutely need to do to protect yourself to ensure that everything you're building isn't crashing and burning. And the big thing out of that today, after coming back from the recent event that you and I were at down in Tulum, is that throughout all of this journey and looking back through all of my coaching notes, all my notes from my conferences, the masterminds and everything, I would say that in order to be an entrepreneur and have success, it's about 70 to 80% mental. And the remaining 20 to 30% is actual tactical business strategy. So the majority of everything that is holding you back is because you're not mentally equipped to be able to do it.
I love that. And that's a realization I've started warming up to more and more as I invest in coaching and masterminds. We're in a group together. We've been to events. When you intentionally set aside time to focus on yourself and also allowing yourself to be vulnerable and seeing where your weaknesses are, acknowledging those in front of other people, workshopping things together. The idea of masterminding is not that everyone shows up and they already know what they're doing. It's everyone shows up, they have things they're working on, a vision that they're working towards, things that they're passionate about, but there are probably holes in their plans or maybe even their personalities or gaps that they need to try and work together to fill. And it's the strength of those groups and the ability to lay those things out on the table and work on them that, like you said, contributes to that 70%. So I think your story of you were willing to outwork everyone at the beginning, and you can absolutely achieve a lot just by that alone without that kind of mastermind and coaching and mindset stuff. However, up to a point, you built enough momentum where you had all this energy that kind of needed to be harnessed, right? And directed a little more intentionally, which is something you've done an incredible job of. So can you explain a little bit about, it's hard to answer this succinctly, but when you started working with a coach, like what were the initial things that kind of helped you reel in some of that energy and focus it?
I think the couple things as I go back to my comment about a mile wide, an inch deep, like I was doing too much and I was just trying to please other people instead of bring basically happiness and clarity to myself. So that was a big thing that I needed to think through is as an athlete, I was a fullback. So fun for me was running full speed into people twice my size. So in business, I could easily just put my head down and work. And if it didn't bring me joy, that was fine. I have a goal and there's a finish line. And when I get to the finish line, that will create happiness because it's done. So that might come off like I was depressed, but I wasn't, right? The deal was is that if I can bottle up my energy and use it to other things that bring me happiness, that's what will help take the business off. So what I started to needed to realize is that being an entrepreneur, you're like the 1% of the world, right? So it becomes a very siloed business model. You're basically working for yourself with yourself. No knock on parents, but a lot of time your parents, your neighbors, your friends are all W-2 workers where they clock in at 8, they leave at 5. They don't understand the stress that comes with it. There's no one to relate to. And that's why masterminding, creating groups like this are so important for entrepreneurs. Is so for me, it became very siloed, right? I was an athlete. I was on big teams and I was always having support systems there. But now I'm an entrepreneur doing this for years and I have nobody to lean on. I have no one to talk to other than my wife. And I didn't always want to go home and talk about work to my wife. So the biggest thing in coaching was, Ben, you need to build a team. You've been doing this, you've been having success. So what does a team look like? Is that business partners? Is that employees? You feed off of energy and that's what brings you happy. So realizing that I was siloed to going to building a team to have a support system. And originally that was through a coach and masterminds. Then it was getting a partner. Then it was getting employees. And now we have a team. So to me, that feels like the football locker room. And I'm having an absolute blast again. And then it becomes into being a leader, right? The captain of the football team is now a leader for your employees and your partners, right? So now I'm reading leadership books and how to learn how to delegate and teach and empower people around me. So now like the excitement of what I was born and raised to do is all coming together and building a business.
No, I love that. And again, it's drawing from those parallels of your experience of what you love to do and that almost like raw human emotion that used to really charge you up, and then bringing it into the context of what you're trying to do with your broader vision. That's why I think people often discount how impactful the past experiences are, but there's something about whatever lit you up when you were a kid or whatever you used to be passionate about. For me, I'm a drummer. Live music was my thing. Playing drums was my thing. And now I even learned that I have to go play drums again in order to reconnect with some of that energy. And then it feeds the rest of my life. So I think finding the way to draw those connection points and contextualize them in the current moment is an incredible skill to have, and probably something that's not that obvious unless somebody points it out to you. Because again,
Yeah, no. So that's one of the things that I realized today is going back to 26-year-old Ben, I wanted to save every penny to reinvest back into my business or invest into actual property. And the reason I didn't go to my very first real estate conference, just as an agent, as a property manager, as an investor, until I was in 2022, like far into my journey. I already owned over $10 million of real estate by that point. I'd never been to a conference. I'd never been to a mastermind. I never had a coach because I was always reinvesting in the business and into property. If I could go back now, I would tell people to reinvest in themselves significantly earlier. Masterminds and coaches. The power of surrounding yourself with the right people and having a coach that can take all of those limiting beliefs and those mental hurdles that you don't know how to work through, that will project you into be able to do things at a significantly faster pace. And if it's a financial return that you're looking for, yes, you might put $10, $15, $20,000 into conferences, masterminds, and coaching, but you will literally 10x that if you have the right support system at a significantly faster pace than I was ever able to accomplish. So my number one advice for people to look and get started is invest in yourself first before you start investing into your actual business or into real estate.
yeah, it's a great point. I often share that we owned 4 rental properties before I ever even heard of Bigger Pockets, which I don't say that to brag. I say that I'm glad it worked out for us and that we learned a ton the hard way, but we could have probably avoided a lot of the rookie mistakes and some of the way we thought about deals, the way we thought about teams, the way like everything we could have done a lot better had we leaned into communities and mentorship and things like that. And that's part of why I decided to even launch my own coaching and work with investors who are at that beginning stage so that they can shortcut some of that stuff. So couldn't agree more on that. So I know we only have a little bit of time left, Ben. I could probably talk to you for 5 hours with all the stuff you've got, not only to offer wisdom wise, but just the tactical experience that you have too. I want to talk about your portfolio a little bit as it stands today and then your team. So clearly it's a hockey stick effect, right? Like you built these incredibly solid foundation with this business of the property management, the agency, but now you have and correct me on the name if I'm wrong, but it's Legacy Investment Group. Is that right? Yeah. So
Yep.
Legacy Investment Group, and this is the kind of top of the pyramid at this point, right? This is your core focus, and you're now collecting and taking down these larger $10+ million deals. You work with a base of investors. You hired a full-time operations manager who's like you're grooming to. I heard you talk about how you target a higher level hire that can grow with your business over the long term instead of just filling and delegating spots that can do these little one-off tasks. So I guess I would love to hear how you think about the current phase of your business and what that looks like today.
Yeah. So as I touched on earlier, we still have, I have multiple companies, right, through a million LLCs. But my three core companies is the real estate sales business, the third party property management, where we only manage for other people's assets, and then our now private equity company, which is Legacy Investment Group. So those are the kind of three top holdcos of each of our company. And so my real estate team, we have 4 agents. We're always ranked as a top 5 team within the whole Remax franchise. Our property management division manages over $15 million of real estate for other people. And then Legacy Investment Group, we own and control and operate just over $70 million of real estate across multifamily, self-storage, and triple net real estate across the Midwest. So we're currently in 6 different states. So we have 4 agents, 2 property managers, and a couple other employees within our private equity firm. And the biggest thing that I've learned while building a team is that you get what you pay for in anything in life. So if you want great results, you need to go get great people, followed by a great work ethic. And I have been a big believer that you need to have the right person in the right seat, meaning that if you're looking for a bookkeeper, but you go get a salesperson to plug into a hole that you have in your company, you're not going to get great results and it's going to bog you down. You need to go get someone who is a bookkeeper to do bookkeeping. You need to get someone who is doing sales to do sales. So making sure you're clear on where you need help is the biggest key. And then I also think that if you're going to pay someone minimum wage, you're going to get minimum wage results. But if you're willing to hire and stretch your ability to go get someone a little bit better that can grow with your company, the better results you're going to have. So my philosophy has been always delay gratification in anything I've ever done. But we've also built the company to run really thin in order to be able to get to the point where we could afford to hire the absolute right person at a probably higher pay range than most other companies would do. But it's because I now know how to use my time. So I'm able to work a little bit further and we're able to stretch our dollars to go get the right person. So basically, the hire that you referenced was Mike. Mike was someone we waited a little bit longer for, but because we hired him, he probably has the capacity, work ethic, and brain to do the job of 2 to 3 people. And we did that through one hire. So today, it costs us more money out of our pocket, quote unquote, to our bottom line. But over the next 3 to 5 years, it is going to not only save us money on payroll, but also make us significantly more revenue. So it becomes a trade-off, and you really need to think how you want to build your team and where you want to spend your time as quote unquote boss. Because now I'm pouring all of my time, effort, energy, resources, leadership skills into Mike because he's hopefully going to be running the company someday. Or at least that's the 3, 5, 10-year vision for him, is that's the goal, that if he wants to be here, he's hopefully going to be running the company.
You know, our friend and mutual friend and mentor, Brian Lubin, who runs the Action Academy, he has this idea that if you make your vision big enough to fit other people's vision into it, that's how you build a solid company and a business that can grow and endure over the long term. So in this case, like you said, instead of finding an hourly employee to go handle some of these day-to-day management tasks, you found somebody who has the capability in your mind, you believe, to eventually run your company. That's how much confidence you have and how much energy and stake you're putting into this person. And so typically the bet you're making is that you'll be rewarded by him being invested in doing absolutely the best he possibly can, which I know Mike as well, and I'm sure he will.
Yeah, and I think on that too, we could probably do a whole hour call just on hiring and processes. But yes, there's the actual tactical side of like, how much can we afford? What are they going to do? Do we have an onboarding manual? Like the business stuff you can just Google and figure out. But at the end of the day, I think hiring the right employee, there's a lot of gut instinct, and you need to trust your gut and your brain. Are these going to be a good culture fit for us? And are they going to be able to spend the time with the rest of our team to increase the energy, to increase the culture? And in return, we will get the outflow on the mathematical side of hiring an employee. So I think there's like a two-headed thing, and gut feeling on are you a good person goes a really long way in building a team.
Absolutely. And not to mention too, like you've been at this for 8 years since you started the agency business, and you've got a long runway ahead of you. And one of the things I've admired about in the time since I've known you, you've been prioritizing, you've made it non-negotiable that you will take breaks and that they won't just be, oh, I'm going to take a weekend and go to a local hotel in Minnesota. You're going on trips where you're intentionally putting your phone away and being present. And I admire that so much, but you have had to build your business that way. And as part of that, it's putting people in place that you trust so that you can do that without just having nightmares the whole time about what you might come back to. And so I think there is an intentional effort that you made to build your business in such a way that you can do that. And that's another advantage. Yes, there's a lot of downsides to being an entrepreneur. Yes, it can be isolating. Yes, you probably have to outwork people at different seasons and phases of that journey. But over time, you can build in things like that. You can build the life you want to build because it's your business and you're building it in the mold of how you want to live.
Yeah, and I think just to touch on that, Vivid Vision, the book was huge. It gets talked a lot on podcasts. One of the first couple books that I ever read was called Start With Why. So having a vision and knowing your why is really important. But what I found so much is throughout talking with other entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors is they forget why they actually started doing what they're seeking out to go do. And you lose sight of it, and then you get into a funnel or you get into a trap of becoming a workaholic. You forget that you started investing for freedom, and you wanted the freedom to travel and experience everything the world has to offer, to spend time with your wife, to be able to be, to coach your kids' t-ball at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, right? So you really forget why you're doing things. And it's easy, right? It's easy to forget because the joy that having success, specifically financially and building a business, is really rewarding. So it's easy to lose sight of why. But the thing I can credit my wife to and having a coach and mentors is bringing me back and telling me to stop, realize what we've done, realize that we're 6 years into this investing journey and we already have significantly more than we ever wanted when we were 26. So stopping to remember why you started the journey is, I think, the number one thing to keeping a great relationship with your spouse, having kids that love you and to be there. And because of that, your business will just grow bigger than you ever wanted, right? Like life is about happiness and experiences. And if you have both of those, your business will just naturally grow.
Amen. And I remember there was a point you made in one of your presentations that I attended about sometimes people mask the reason behind it, like the reason that they're working so hard. They say, oh, I'm doing this for my family, as they sit and their family's in the other room and they're ignoring them so that 4 years from now, they can go to their baseball game. They're in the other room right now, right? You got to find a way to balance that along the way too. It doesn't mean you can't work hard. It doesn't mean you can't maybe take a few extra cycles here and there to go out in the evenings and network and stuff like that. But if you lose sight of what's right in front of you and you don't celebrate the incremental progress and spend time with the people that care about you, you do lose sight of the big picture. So I remember that point in particular hit hard, especially for me with 3 young kids. I do my very best to make sure I carve out the time for them. But I think you have to keep that in mind so that you don't accidentally give yourself an excuse to step away from the things that really matter, right? Ben, I know we're coming up on time. Again, we should probably do this again sometime because there's a number of different topics we could drill down into, but I think we hit all the major points. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about investing with you or maybe even ask some follow-up questions from stuff they might have heard in the interview?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the two best places to find me is if you have any interest on real estate investing, what our thesis is and how we've been able to build our company. You can go to our website, legacyinvestmentgroup.com. If you're interested in following me to reach out, I would say Instagram's probably the best place to do that. Ben_Kall, Kall. I turn all my notifications off on social media, so I apologize now if I don't respond in 10 seconds. But I do respond through all of my messages that I get. So those are the two best places to find and reach out to me.
Awesome. We will drop those in the show notes, and I can attest. I know a lot of people that invest with Ben that are very happy. I've seen his investor presentations. I've been thoroughly impressed by everything that you've done, Ben, and I'm grateful to be able to call you a friend and a mentor. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, no, right back at you. And I know there's a million other things that we can dive into. So I'd be more than happy to come back on the show and some other time in the
I
future
will be
too.
taking you up on that. All right. Thanks, Ben. Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you could take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.